Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Cars Adventures Rewatch podcast. In this series, Robin and I go back through my entire Cars Adventures series, and we rewatch and commentate on each season. Today, of course, we are covering Season 3, which started on October 28th of 2017. Now, this season, we found out something very interesting about this season pretty early on, which is that it doesn't have much of a overarching plot like the other seasons do.
It only has it has elements which are important to the overall series plot, but in an individual season it doesn't really have a plot. It's just loose episodes which sometimes connect together, and most of the times they don't.
And yeah, we had that in the first two seasons, but here I really went all out with there's not much of an overarching plot, which is very different from Cars Adventures now. And a lot of later...
The longest plots in this season are like 2 episodes at most.
We do have one sort of overarching plot that's sort of running in the background throughout the season, and that is the last race of the Piston Cup season. I guess if I were to say anything were the main plot, it would be that, because that is the season finale, is us seeing that. But yeah, it's very different from how Cars Adventures functions now, where typically you get a few sort of one-off episodes. At the time of making this, the most recent Cars Adventures episode I've made was sort of a one-off episode, RoboSarge 2.0. It didn't connect to anything else going on in the current season. And this season is basically almost 24 episodes of that. Occasionally you get one that loosely connects things, but like Robin said earlier, this is pretty important to the overall series, a lot of stuff here, as it really sort of gets the main conflict of a lot of early Cars Adventures, that being the evil next gens. It really sets that up quite a bit better than past seasons did.
Yeah.
So I guess we should get started. Of course, for those of you who don't know how this podcast works, we briefly discuss every episode of the season, then we do a top 3 ranking. We both go over our top 3 episodes, then we give some overall thoughts. So I guess we should get started with Season 3, Episode 1, Fabulous Rookies. Do you want to recap this one? Because I don't really remember it that much.
Okay, so this is quite a big one. There's it's another Piston Cup race. A few new rookies join. 2 more YouTuber Next Gen Customs join.
And those
Dinoco and Fabulous, who are also the only ones that are sort of still around. They haven't really appeared recently, but they are still around.
I still have the customs of them. Everything else has been repainted.
Yeah.
So Fabulous and Dinoco.
We also see more Next Gens joining the race as a whole, with Herb Kerbler joining, and he's important. He's still important and then they have a race with the rookie starting in the back, and at some point Herb crashes Winford, Bradford, Rutherford,
and I think that's where it ends.
Who becomes badly injured and then is sent to the hospital. What happens to him we'll get into the next episode. And yeah, that's pretty much the plot.
Yeah, so the 2 rookies that are introduced here are Fabulous, named after Fabulous Cars Fan 129, who was actually my first ever subscriber on YouTube. He comes in and out of the Cars community every few years, and I think that makes him the only YouTuber custom who still runs an active channel, and that's actually the reason...
Is it really active, though?
Well, he's around occasionally. He was around a few weeks ago, and he's the reason why there's a 129 on my custom, actually. The other car here is, I believe, Dinoco, who has just the ugliest custom ever.
Yeah, that's one of my notes. He looks terrible. Just terrible.
Now, I don't think he's on the thumbnail, so people listening to the podcast will, you won't see him. But if you go back, man, ugly custom. And the thing is, Dinoco gets a new paint job later on in the season, and I really like that design. But here he's really ugly. At this point, I was just sort of afraid of using my white paint. My white paint never works. I've had to get replacements for it several times. And it's difficult because you got to paint in like the whites of the eyes of the car, but it blends in with other colors very easily. So for a while, I actually used silver to sort of circumvent this problem. But here, I just straight up colored the whites of his eyes blue and made his eyes black and his eyebrows black. It's a really ugly custom. It looks like a 3-year-old made it. Okay, it's really bad. Fabulous is okay. As much as I love the Fabulous custom nowadays, it was made out of an exclusive Cars 2 McQueen variant, and I'm mad that I repainted that because I'm probably never going to get that again.
Well, you never know. But yeah. Also worth noting that Sally finally gets a Dynaco paint job, and she used the Natalie Certain model.
Yeah, I didn't have a spare Sally, and I guess I wasn't going to go out and get one, so Sally is a repaint of Natalie Certain. Good job, me. Now,
so there's also a random thing that in the middle of the episode, there's all of a sudden talk about Ralphie Carson. Who the heck is that?
Ralphie Carson's brought up on several occasions, mainly by Double O and another character named Thomas Blinker. In the last episode, I mentioned that there are weird references to other people's Cars series who had YouTuber customs at the time. Ralphie Carson was a reference to another channel's series. In fact, it was a reference to the series of the person Double O was named after. So, in hindsight, I don't think he has any of his videos public anymore. I haven't spoken with him in years, but I've been told that he deleted his content. So,
yeah. Also, one thing that one of the other characters you mentioned, like a Rex Reveler repaint with the black hood and the star or something on it. I always recognized him from the other guy's YouTube videos, and you also had him in your series.
Yeah, I think he made him first. You have some really bad customs here. There's this white car that supposedly is racing with the sponsor of Disney, with a very poorly drawn Disney D on him. It just kind of looks like a power button logo. There are some bad customs in this. I think we need
a lot of Lightning McQueen model racers.
Yeah, I think we need to double down on just how bad the Dynaco Sally is, because again, she's a repaint of Natalie Certain, and it's just I'm just scrolling through the episode right now. A lot of these are just beyond ugly. I will say though, the Ty custom makes his first cameo appearance in this episode. He's just in the background of the race.
He becomes more relevant in for a bit, at least in later seasons.
Yeah, so Ty was my OC. Obviously, and Fabulous Cars Fan was the one who came up with this storyline, that Fabulous was the racer and Ty was the crew chief, and I adapted that into Cars Adventures, and that's still what I see my Ty mascot character as to this day. He's not a racer, despite looking like Lightning McQueen, but you'd see early on in Cars Adventures, the Ty character was just in the background, and he's a repaint of Jack DePost, at least for now.
Also, one last thing I want to mention, which I didn't mention during the season 2 podcast, is that in this episode, Cal suddenly comes down from like a skydiving class, and that reminds me of that. There's early Cars Adventures, the earlier seasons always had all these things with classes. You had Lizzie's creative nap class, Cal's skydiving class, which returns several times this season, and a lot more of those. Filmer had an anti-alien class, and sometimes was like, where are all the times? Oh, well, they're busy with this class or that class.
Why is everyone going to class?
Yeah.
Yeah, we should mention Dynaco wants a crew chief, and he's like, man, I wish a cool crew chief would fall out of the sky, and then Cal falls, and apparently he was taking a skydiving class. And again, skydiving class is referenced a few times. There was a Ramon ran a skydiving class last season. But the fact that there are two I wish blank would fall out of the sky jokes over the span of like 5 episodes, because there's one in the episode with the monster truck last season.
Yeah, I wish excitement would fall out of the sky.
That's not even a thing people say. So
yeah,
I will say
things falling out of the sky is sometimes said, but not often.
I think that the racing episodes this season are pretty okay. You have one at the beginning of the season, you have one at the end. I think they're all right compared to racing before this.
We've been going on about the first episode for quite a while though, so we should move on to the next episode.
The Visit. So after being damaged by Herb Kerbler, after Herb crashed him, Winfred Bradford Rutherford is rushed to the hospital where Sally comes to visit him. Dr. Damage is his ambulance because I did not have a race ambulance until last month. Last month of this year. And yeah, so everyone comes to see Winford in the hospital. It's honestly a really sweet scene where all of the racers come out, and even their pit crews, which I'll get back to in just a minute.
They all watched him die.
Yeah, he dies. He unfortunately dies due to this crash. Now we know that Herb was planning to crash Winford, but I don't think it's ever been clarified if the intention was to kill. Because I don't think it was. I doubt it was. But he was.
I don't think so.
He wanted to crash Winford, and Winford crashes here, and the crash is so severe that he dies at the end of the episode. So this is really the first notable character death. We had a flashback to Doc's death in season 1, but this is the first.
It is also the first casualty of the coming conflicts.
Yeah. So
it's pretty much the start of the conflict, isn't it?
Yeah. So
it already sort of started with some of the stock cars fighting against the evil group that became the evil Next Gens, but this season is really the start of the good Next Generation organization.
Yeah, it's really the start of the evil Next Gens as a unified group who's plotting and scheming, and they gain some new members as the season goes on. Not much to say about this episode. I think it's a pretty alright one. It's another pretty short episode, and it's sort of an emotional episode because you do have a character dying. But I just want
who was pretty significant in the Piston Cup races up to this point.
Yeah, Winford was in them a lot, and of course Winford has never returned. But I do want to bring up something in the scene where
he returned in Redline
by accident. There's a scene in Cars Adventures movie Redline, where there's a massive group of cars organized together, and Winford is accidentally there. We don't talk about that. That was a mistake. So I do want to bring up the scene where all of the cars come together, because this is the best look at a lot of my early customs. I'm sure you can see them in some early collection videos, but you can see a lot of cars, that weird RSN racer. There are quite a few new racers that appear in this episode. You have the Fade-In racer, who actually becomes important next season. And then I just wanted to bring up, in the way back, in addition to the tie custom, you also see an intersection, a double O crew chief, I guess, which is a repaint of Tex. And then you also see Tyler's crew chief, which is a repaint of Smokey. And I just wanted to bring them up because I forgot I ever made that those customs.
A lot of these customs are pretty much forgotten since you never really reviewed them or had a closer look at them. So.
Yeah, I'm sure you could see them in one of my early collection videos, but it is cool to see basically all these lost customs that were racers in the early days of the series. So I just wanted to point them out, highlight them a little, because to me it's kind of cool to see all these customs that I don't have anymore. So yeah. Winford dies. Oh wow, now my other neighbor is mowing their lawn. Both of my neighbors are mowing their lawn right now. This is... Oh, thanks, guys.
I don't hear anything right now, so we can just continue on.
Then hopefully the camera doesn't pick it up. Up next we have Wingo's nephew. Do you want to do this one?
So Wingo has to go somewhere, drift race or something, and his nephew is staying over, so Lightning has to take care of his nephew. And his nephew goes a bit... It goes a bit crazy, does a couple weird things, ends up in Danny Swervis' hauler.
Right. I think they're playing hide and seek.
Lightning and Danny chase him down until, they save him.
Yeah.
That's pretty much the plot.
This is the introduction of Wingo's nephew. Bradley? Is it Bradley? I think so.
I think so.
Wingo's nephew has reappeared a few other times. But yeah, I think they're playing hide and seek, right? And then hijinks ensue. He gets lost in the hauler. It's a fun little episode. I think it's notable for introducing Wingo's nephew, who again has returned as recently as 2021, but he does not appear frequently. And for those of you who are wondering, Wingo's nephew is depicted by a mini adventures of Wingo. I honestly, this one was unfortunately a lot more forgettable than I thought it would be.
Yeah, the only things I wrote down about this episode are, first of all, Luigi still has the Tower of Tires because that hasn't been seen in Cars Adventures in a long time.
Yeah.
And of course the ramp truck.
Oh, the ramp truck.
Which is a funny thing because I actually have that that had that Mack truck with the ramp back thing. That was one of my first ever Cars items in my collection, and I used to play so much. And it's like just funny to see it be used in the series like this. I believe it happens several times that this trailer thing is used for a ramp.
Yeah, at the time I didn't have any other haulers other than the Octane Gain, the Bobby Swift hauler, which is used as Danny's hauler here, which is why you see it so much. I didn't own any other haulers at the time, and still to this day I don't own any like industrial regular haulers, which hopefully will change because we're supposed to get a truck stop hauler later this year. So I attached the Gill cab that I owned to this old plastic Mack playset I used to have, which opens up as a ramp, and they use that. Also, Cal once again falls out of the sky and crashes through it to make the ramp work as a ramp. Thanks, Cal.
Everything is very convenient in early Cars Adventures.
It really is. So, yeah, I also just wanted to bring up, before we move on, last thing, there's a really weird camera angle at the end of this episode where it's just level with the floor, and I just think that's really strange.
You don't do that often.
I really don't. So, anyway.
It happens. Yeah, okay, moving on.
Cars Fan on the Run. Season 3, Episode 4, Cars Fan on the Run 3. Where are Cars Fan on the Run 1 and 2?
Plus, the title is not even accurate.
So, here's the thing. Your first question is probably, where are Cars Fan on the Run 1 and 2? Also, who's Cars Fan? Because there's nobody in the show called Cars Fan. So, Fabulous is based off of, again, Cars YouTuber and friend of mine, Fabulous Cars Fan 129, and he, at the time, made videos called Cars Fan on the Run and Cars Fan on the Run 2. So I took it upon myself to make Cars Fan on the Run 3 and Cars Adventure. So it's another case of another YouTuber's series influencing Cars Adventures to the point where it no longer makes sense upon rewatch. You have that and Ralphie Carson. But at the very least, I think Fabulous Cars Fan still has his old videos up. So in this episode, it's sort of a follow-up to the Lightning and Frank episode last season, and it also is actually a follow-up to the Season 2 finale. Because in the Season 2 finale, Mater wins Scott Tiller because Smokey needs a new like farming car of some kind. I don't know what to call it. Whatever. He needs a new combine engine or whatever. And Mater makes a deal with Kabuto, and when he wins the drift race at the end of last season, he is able to win Scott Tiller, who he wants to give to Smokey, and we see him do that here. Also, at this point, Smokey's been replaced with the long Smokey model. Just thought that was worth mentioning. As the episode goes on, they also deliver a bulldozer for some reason.
Yeah. And the bulldozer then escapes, so that he chases them. So Lightning calls a friend to help.
And that
Fabulous.
friend.
And my first question is, why would you get Fabulous, who has no idea how to handle bulldozers? I assume.
In addition, Lightning. What really bothered me here, Lightning and Fabulous have not interacted before this point.
Well, there's a lot of the custom that were based on YouTubers or other YouTubers series who, for some reason, take like a prominent role in one of the episodes this season, despite having not barely spoken in previous episodes or been really relevant.
They're just casually important.
Basically, thanks to the fact that things going to from other YouTuber series. Pretty much.
Yeah, they're all weirdly important once again, and I know I said this when we were recording the podcast for the last episode, but I may have cut this part out in editing, which is that these guys, the YouTuber customs early on, really sort of take over the roles of the Radiator Springs townies. I don't mind them being there, but they are in the series a surprising amount. So Cars Fan chases around the Tillers, and that's kind of it. There's also
the Tiller fights the bulldozer.
Oh, okay, I forgot that.
That's what happens because Fabulous, he also gets chased because you can call him, but what is he supposed to
What's
do
he gonna
against
do?
the bulldozer?
There's
But then the tiller comes in and saves them, and yeah, that's pretty much the end.
also a weird part where Mater becomes El Matador to try to fend off the bulldozer. And this episode actually has a few scenes of a subplot which start to sort of put together this season's very, very, very loose overarching plot. We see the Racer Den, which is a restaurant where the racers hang out. I built it for my Hey Cal movie, which I was making at the same time. We won't be covering that on the podcast because it's not relevant to Cars Adventures at all, thank you. But Danny goes in there. We meet the bartender, Aaron. Aaron was a green Radiator Springs racer car who still occasionally appears to this day. He was in Lap 3, Season 1. He just appeared, and he's still named Aaron.
Yeah.
He was named after Aaron's World of Cars, another Cars YouTuber who's also still active.
I assume that that was what you named him after, because Aaron also had a car, the same car, also the green one, named after himself in his early on in his series. So I thought it was named after that's why he named it Aaron.
So yeah, it's a reference to him. He and I have actually spoken since. At the time, he didn't know me. Anyway, Danny is eavesdropping on Cruz and Jackson and Tim and Herb, the evil next gen group, right? And they're trying to figure out what to do, whatever diabolical plan they're cooking up. And they find Danny eavesdropping and they capture him, and that's where it ends. I have no issue with showing subplots in episodes. Every once in a while you get an episode that shows a scene from another plot line going on, but this is a weird place to do it.
Yeah.
So
at least it made more sense than pretty much the following episode.
A friendly race. Oh no. Okay, I'll handle
it.
This.
It starts off with the whole Rolfie Carson gravestone thing, and it's just like
it gets dumber from here. So I'll handle this one.
Yeah.
Double O and Thomas Blinker, a character who's suddenly relevant here because he was in another channel series, are putting down the gravestone of a car named Ralphie Carson, who died in a video made by another YouTuber, so this is just some weird inside joke. Lightning, who is in his road trip paint job from the Route 66 road trip series, which is one of my favorite McQueen designs. You see it later on in Cars Adventures quite a bit whenever he's doing the Route 66 dash, but that's not relevant. Just wanted to bring up this as its first appearance. He says Sally is off at like a convention or an event or something.
He and Sally are going on vacation.
Oh, okay. And he wants them to watch over the cozy cone while he's gone, which, remember, is still just one paper cone. Because there's a scientist in there who's doing weird chemical experiments, and he just wants to make sure everything is okay. Now, once again, this episode presents what I think is a funny concept, which is there's a wacky guy in the cozy cone. Haha, what's he gonna do? Well, he's made a chemical that can deflate cones. Sure, it knocks over the paper cone. This, I think I lost brain cells while watching this episode because of this plot line.
Because it's not even a real cone.
It's not even a cone. That was my first thought. It's like a giant recreation of a cone, but no, he can deflate any cone. We need to bring this back in Cars Adventures now, where somebody...
No, this is one of those things from past plot which should not return.
So, Thomas Blinker and Double O have a race also. That's why it's called a friendly race. The two of them have a race. They're not doing their job. They're not looking after the cozy cone, and since they weren't paying attention to it, the wacky scientist, he deflates the cozy cone by accident. This one is just beyond stupid, and I don't like it, and it's dumb.
I've got nothing. Do I have anything to say? Yeah, I literally just wrote watch. So yeah, exactly. Moving on.
Yeah, I do want to say though, the name of this episode is actually a reference. Before I was on YouTube in 2014, I just did a series where I filmed myself playing with my cars, and the first episode, the series was called Cars Adventures, and the first episode was called A Friendly Race. So I think it's a reference to that. Anyway, the next episode, episode 6, Luigi's cooking show. Luigi and Guido's favorite cooking show, Cooking with Corey, gets canceled, so they decide to make their own cooking show, and that's the plot.
They fail.
Yeah, they do.
That's pretty much all there's to say about the plot. Just one random detail which I didn't like was because it got canceled because it had only 2 viewers, and like the assumption is, oh, those 2 viewers are Guido and Luigi. However, they are looking at one screen, so they're only one of the 2 viewers.
Yeah. It's just another case of early Cars Adventures being so dumb. Also,
I mean, it doesn't. It makes still sense because if you only had 2 different televisions turned on watching it, then why would you just continue the show?
right. Now, this episode was released on Halloween, which I think is funny because there's not really a Halloween special. Any Halloween specials were in the last season with the Ghostlight stuff. This was actually on Halloween. Also, what Luigi and Guido end up cooking is just kind of gross. They put, like, one piece of spaghetti and they break it up and they put it in a little thing of water and then put...
you break it... Guido is supposedly breaking it, but it's just your fingers.
It's another occasion of... wow, look at this. These items that are definitely not in scale with the cars. It's just regular uncooked spaghetti. And they put it in a container of water, and they also put grated cheese in there, and they break up a tortilla chip and put it in there, and that's the joke. I was eating when I was watching this, and I didn't want to eat anymore by the time it was done.
Okay.
Yeah, not much to say for this one. And I don't think there's much to say for the next one, but do you want to do that? It's episode
just,
7.
Dinoco
moves into town.
So Dinoco and his crew chief Kel decide to go train in Radiator Springs, and after they train, Dinoco decides to move into Radiator Springs, and he also convinces Kel to move into Radiator Springs, and that's where the episode ends.
That's it. There's really not much going on. It's another case of, wow, check out these OCs living in Radiator Springs. This one, all I thought while I was watching this feels so, like, fanficky. Like, wow, check it out. We get to live in Radiator Springs and interact with Lightning McQueen.
Yeah, well, only notable thing for me is that Cal moves in, but he's never seen living in Radiator Springs again.
It is not addressed. We see Cal's where Cal lives a few episodes later, and he lives in an apartment. And nobody brings up it's not brought up that he isn't in Radiator Springs anymore. And I was so annoyed with myself for this. And then I was watching the end of the season, and in like episode 20, it's mentioned that Cal actually lives in Carburetor County. Okay.
Which is still nearby Radiator Springs.
Yeah.
I guess he moved near Radiator Springs instead of in?
Yeah, I don't know. Episode 8, Mac's new job, marks a turning point for the series, because this was the first time I gained the ability to make my own episode thumbnails. And this one is also sort of significant to the overall series because with Lightning no longer racing, Mac gets a job as a party supplies deliverer. This is the first time we've seen actual Mac diecast in the form of Jocko Flocko Mac. And I still don't have a regular Mac. I own a Cars 2 Mac now, but at the time this was my first actual metal Mac diecast. And I still use it in the series to this day, because in Cars Adventures to this day, Mac, instead of working for Lightning, he works for a party delivery company.
Most of it. He sometimes still helps with transporting things for the cars. So,
yeah. I do think it's funny that...
Also, one thing that I think is funny from this episode is that APB is used as the police car because she works as a police car as an extra job or something, and apparently it is honorable to crash into a demolition derby car.
Right, so what happens is while Mac is trying to deliver something to a party, and Lightning just straight up jumps in the back of the trailer, because every kid loves Lightning McQueen. Sure, why not?
That's the stupidest assumption I've ever heard.
They run into APB, who, as Robin said, is like an honorary police officer. Another case of me just not having enough items in my collection. That's a recurring trend in early Cars Adventures. And yeah, they end up... This had a joke I actually really liked, where Lightning and APB are chasing each other. Lightning has the present on him, because for whatever reason Mac is out of commission. And he goes, oh no, up ahead, it's a busy intersection. And we cut to Jimmy Cables. We cut to Jimmy Cables, and he's like swamped with work, because he's the intersection racer. Busy intersection. That was like, I thought that was actually a clever joke, and to this day, I'm proud of that one. That's like
that would be like one of those jokes that could still work today.
Like, I could see myself putting that in a Cars Randomness episode now. Like, I think that's so funny. And then, of course, he looks over, and it's an actual busy intersection. APB ends up in the middle, and apparently, yeah, it's honorable to crash a demolition derby car. So they end up at the girls' party, and plot twist, she wanted everything to be themed to planes, not cars. Planes as in the vehicles, not the franchise. And they hired Daredevil Jones, which is actually just Dusty in disguise. Another case of me just shoehorning in whatever recent item I bought into Cars Adventures. That's a frequent issue early on in the series. It's just, yo, check out these things I just bought. Daredevil.
The same goes for Taco Mac.
Yeah, exactly. Daredevil Jones confirms that he is in fact Dusty, which marks Dusty's first appearance in the series, physical appearance. He was referenced earlier on. And that's kind of it. The little girl does in fact not like Lightning McQueen, and the episode ends. So yeah, to this day, Mac is still delivering party supplies.
Yeah, and we move on to the second 2-episode plot in this series: Lizzie's new date and wedding crashers.
Yeah.
Lizzie there was like on Stanley's death day. Lizzie becomes extra sad.
Yeah, Stanley died.
Was it Sally? Was it Sally or Flo who then? I believe it was Sally who then wanted her to get a new date.
Hence the name of the episode, Lizzie's New Date. Yeah, so Stanley died 50 years ago on the day this episode takes place. So,
yeah, and she falls in almost immediately falls in love with Trunkov, which you used Petrov Trunkov, but it's a separate character named William. And they immediately fall in love, and McQueen and Mater are not happy with it. And yeah, that's pretty much the plot for this episode.
Yeah,
I'm just gonna include the other one as well, so we can just talk about the two at the same time. So in the second episode, Lizzie and William get married. Why? Because they only know each other for like a really short time, so it already doesn't make sense. But okay, and Lightning, with the help of the YouTuber Next Gens, because of course they're the YouTubers, so they're always on the side of Lightning.
Always.
They try to stop the wedding with Mater and Lightning make a PowerPoint presentation about Stanley and Lizzie, and all the YouTubers, they do all kinds of crazy stuff to stop the wedding, like crashing into everybody who's at the wedding, throwing Stanley's statue around.
It's
and at the end, it does. Later on, it doesn't. It's not revealed in this episode if it works, but later on in this series, William returns. So basically, whatever they tried, it didn't work.
Yeah, I gotta say, honestly, it's really rude for them to be trying to break up Lizzie's relationship just because.
On the other hand, she gets married after knowing this guy for a couple hours.
But before they get married, they're still anti-William. William, I think, is a funny character because he literally talks exactly like Lizzie, and they're both just kind of crazy. He's just male Lizzie. I wish we'd seen a bit more of him, in all honesty, because he could have been a funny character. And I think he is a funny character. We just don't. It's not a time in which Cars Adventures is funny, so there's not much done with him. But like even when they just date, Lightning's like, "No, we got to break him up. This isn't right. Stanley wouldn't approve." It's been 50 years.
Sometimes people just find love again after so many years after they've lost someone, and like if you're a good person and you're dead and your wife marries someone else, you should be happy that there's find a way to be happy again, right?
Exactly.
As much as you can be happy, we don't know how that is after death, but that's another thing. But yeah, you if you were alive afterwards, you would want someone you love to be happy again, right?
Exactly. We're getting real deep on this episode, talking about Lizzie's new date.
And it's just a joke, and we get all deep on it.
Right. So, the next episode, Wedding Crashers. I remember the William arc being funny, but Wedding Crashers sucks. It's basically Carburetor Crash again, but with tape. They get tape and start flinging themselves around, and I'm just having a grand old time attaching cars to tape. And that's one of the jokes Look, tape. Woo! Also, yeah, they want to bring the Stanley statue, like
But
hover
I
it
guess that
down.
the tape is sort of one of the mini plots throughout the season because it returns again later on.
Yeah. In other words, I had a roll of tape in my room and I got bored. So they want to like lower the Stanley statue down to give a warning, and they use tape. It just gets way off the rails with the cars just flinging themselves around. We do, however, see the PowerPoint presentation, which is just reusing images of Lizzie and Stanley from Time Travel Mater. And another thing I love is they say like Lizzie and Stanley, like we don't know much about their relationship. It's like then why'd you make this? Like you're a terrible
They're
friend.
they founded Radio. Stanley founded Radio Springs, but they're pretty much the founders.
I love how like I couldn't come up with like new information about them. No, it's just, we don't know much about them, but they made the town, so Lizzie shouldn't remarry. Um, so
Yeah, okay.
I guess we should move on to Before the Race. Before the Race features 3 plot lines as illustrated on this very poorly made thumbnail. We get updates on 3 different things. Up first, we see Rusty and Dusty at the time, as referenced in this episode's terrible fourth wall break that all Cars Adventures viewers should be accustomed to at this point. There were always bad fourth wall breaks early on in the series. So Rusty and Dusty won a fan vote to be introduced into the series, and we see them here where they're trying to figure out, like, hey, so the last race of the season is coming up, and I think they say 2 days, and like, hey, well,
it's way more than 2 days, but okay.
What if we get Cruz back? What do we do if Cruz is no longer evil?
They say it's their last chance to get Cruz back, which yeah,
not true,
again,
but okay.
I've said this too many times in this podcast so far. It makes no sense.
So Rusty and Dusty decide that they'll be the crew chiefs. That also doesn't make sense, but okay. They'll be Cruz's crew chiefs. And
Sure.
Then we see that Jackson has Danny tied up. Is this when he makes the deal with Danny? That Danny can go free as long as he doesn't win the last race of the season.
I mean, he doesn't end up winning, so
but still,
I guess he kept on to the deal.
Yeah, so they'd captured Danny earlier on, obviously, as we went over, and now they say, like, hey, if you don't win, right? Dale Earnhardt Jr., we then see.
That is surprisingly kind, actually, of them to let him go, because later in the series they would have not have done that.
Yeah. Well, this is still the early days for them. We then see Dale, and one of my favorite things about this season, about Early Cars Adventures, is the consistency with Dale Earnhardt Jr.
I wanted to mention that he's throughout the entirety of the almost every time with the Piston Cup that he is brought up, it's like, yeah, this is his last season. Which, of course, last season was a while ago, but yeah, in this case, yeah, it's his last season.
We focus on it quite a bit, and I really like that continuity. Throughout each season, we learn that this is going to be Dale's last Piston Cup season, and he needs help. So Mario Andretti, which is me doing a terrible Mario impression, because haha, funny reference, decides to be his crew chief, which is never addressed again. We then see Flo, who tells us that the next part of the episode was a suggestion. And we see Cal's lonely one-man apartment, the first appearance of this, and the first utterance of the words Cal and lonely in the same sentence, which, trust me, becomes important later.
Also, one thing I want to mention is that earlier on in the season, during episode 9, we actually get the first Cal is lonely joke, except it's not about Cal, it's about Stanley.
Yeah.
Originally, the joke is actually Stanley is lonely.
The first official Cal is lonely,
which I think deserves. That should be known.
Yeah, so Cal is lonely is a long-standing running joke in Cars Adventures that starts later on the season where I sing this jingle, Cal is lonely. You know it. Everyone knows it. Anyway, it's on my channel. It started out with Stanley. It started off with Stanley is lonely earlier on in the season. Now we see Cal's lonely one-man apartment, which has a mailbox, because that's how apartments work. And he gets a letter from the king, who reveals that he's going to be returning to racing. Another thing that we actually see later on in the series. Another thing that carried over. He said he's going to continue racing for in the next Piston Cup season. And something that bothers me is this was also a suggestion. once again showing that I just let suggestion videos just sort of guide the plot sometimes. Not that I didn't have ideas for it, but I shouldn't have been accepting suggestion videos that were going to do something major for the plot, like bring the king back to racing. Now I like the king's return to racing storyline later on in the series, but still, like
Yeah, we'll get into it when it's relevant.
that's it. I just want to bring that up because that is another case of actual continuity across several seasons. But what there isn't continuity with, as Robin sort of referenced earlier, we say it's 2 days until the last race of the season. This is what, episode 11? And the season finale.
The final race is in episode 24.
Yeah, the season finale is the final race. So you're telling me all of this happened across 2 days?
It certainly didn't, because I believe there's at least a few things that take place over several days. So
it also doesn't make sense because there's a Veterans Day special and then a Thanksgiving special, and those are Veterans Day is on the 11th of November, and Thanksgiving is on like the third Thursday of November. So it's a few weeks. So just weird continuity error there. The next episode is the Headlight Zone. For those of you who didn't know, the Headlight Zone started off as this one-off episode in Cars Adventures.
Hosted by Sigalert.
For some reason. Now, we all know the Headlight Zone as a separate series I do on my channel, obviously a parody of the Twilight Zone. It comes around every October or every other October, and it's not connected to Cars Adventures. It's hosted by Sterling, a reference to Rod Serling, who hosted the original Twilight Zone show. For some reason, Sigalert did it here. And we get three stories about...
Also worth mentioning that a few years ago, I remember you saying that the Headlight Zone episodes were also among the few episodes that were not considered canon, because how are you going to fit them into the continuity?
Yeah, this isn't canon, much like the Doc episode last season. The three stories are probably my personal favorite. Sheriff gets convinced that Luigi and Guido are robots, in which I replace them with the R2-D2 and C-3PO Luigi and Guido. I just think that's funny. In the end, it turns out that they aren't robots. They were preparing for a Star Wars convention, but then we learned that Fillmore was a robot.
Yeah, because Fillmore is just talking to him, then suddenly he says, "Battery low, battery low."
Right. And that's, as we all know, that's how robots work. They start yelling low battery.
I mean, if you're an undercover robot, you wouldn't want to do that.
Exactly. Whoever designed the Fillmore robot did a really bad job. The next story...
Well, it's probably the same guy who designed RoboCharge.
Right. Well, this isn't canon. The next...
I know, but still.
The next clip has them bringing Ralphie Carson's back. Is this when they first get the gold paint jobs, or was that another episode? Because now all the YouTuber customs have silver and gold highlights. In other words, I bought...
They already had. I had golden paint jobs in the thumbnail of Wedding Crashers, so I don't think it was.
In one episode, they mentioned getting gold paint jobs, and yeah, now they have silver and gold highlights because I had just bought silver and gold paint. Them getting repainted was the subject of my first ever live stream, which was a discussion about what would happen in Cars Adventures Season 3. That's still up on my channel. I haven't watched it in years. It was a very early live stream. Anyway, as I was saying, they are carrying Ralphie Carson's gravestone, because this is still a thing for some reason, and they've decided they're going to put it in Mater's junkyard, and Mater gets scared and he covers it with junk, and then the ghost of Ralphie Carson, who is cruising McQueen, appears, because, okay. Then the third one has DJ and Wingo on the highway, and all of a sudden the Pizza Planet truck appears, and he disappears, and he reappears next to Buzz Lightyear and Bullseye from Toy Story. The joke is that the Pizza Planet truck just teleported from the Cars universe to the Toy Story universe. It was a joke I thought actually was a funny concept, and I reused it in a Cars Randomness episode where I did it much better.
And unintentionally, it is very similar to my plans for my What If series, where Todd was going to be the Watcher.
Yeah. You're going to have Todd, like, traveling universes. The next episode is the Veterans Day special. It's called Search and Rescue. And it's just simply Sarge telling the story of a time he rescued a tank with his military crew. It introduces a whole cast of new customs that were just repaints of vehicles from some army set I had. And this was a Veterans Day special. In the end, it has a really sweet ending.
These characters often return in There's quite a few of Sarge's stories throughout the Cars Adventure series, and these guys, they often return in those episodes.
Yeah, I like the ending.
Also worth noting that this is the first time you use that Lego boat base with Lego cars eyes for just to have a boat, and that keeps on that kept on returning throughout the series.
Yeah, as different characters.
It's always a different boat, but yeah, just
yeah. So I really like the ending where we learn that Sarge is still friends with all these guys. It's a simple episode. I just enjoy it for the new characters it introduced, and it's just different. There isn't much to it. As per usual, it's pretty convenient how they discover their boat just crashes into where the other guy went missing, even though it took them weeks to find him. And also, another car or a plane that they lost along the way just conveniently landed on that same platform.
Yeah.
In episode 14, Cruz returns. Cruz returns to Radiator Springs and is acting good again. And Lightning trusts her, but everyone else is like, no, she's obviously still evil.
Not everyone. It's mainly the YouTubers.
Right, the most important character.
The guy, because the YouTubers, they're the people who watch the show that you made customs of, and they're important. They're important to the series,
right?
Because they were the viewers, pretty much your friends, and of course because they're your friends, viewers, whatever. They get special privileges and always be knowing everything that is the problem.
Plot armor. Yeah. So
yeah.
In the next episode.
Which is the same reason why they're also not. Why there's also none of the YouTuber next gens evil next gens.
Right, they're all good. So Dynaco's new paint job is the next episode, and in it, not only does Dynaco get a new paint job, but also the cars try to convince Lightning that hey, Cruz is still
one more
evil.
thing from Cruz Returns, alongside the YouTuber next gens, Ramon is also suspicious of her, and there's also a whole thing with him and tape.
Right, Ramon gets covered in tape. In Dynaco's new paint job, all of the customs actually get new paint jobs, but Dynaco's the most focused on. He also has the biggest glow up, and I still really like the Dynaco design to this day. We are also introduced to a character named Sargent, a repaint of a Sarge, who is referencing Cars channel Sarge's collection, who is also still around.
Yeah, he's also still around. He's not a racer, of course, because
he's a repaint of Sarge. He's not really relevant. He didn't even need to be in the series. He could have just been a custom I made, but whatever.
He's been around. He was around quite a bit in the background, and he's one of the few YouTuber customs that doesn't get at least some form of focus.
Yeah,
it's like the only time he's actually sort of prominent, and other than that, he just shows up in the background.
So, episode 16 is commercials, third lap around the track. I guess I really like the commercial episodes, because earlier on in this season, there are references to, hey, this isn't a commercial special, twice. We see Van advertise a GPS. We see Excitement return to advertise an extreme monster truck rally. And finally,
hey, Extreme. Well, it's not, of course, not the official canon reason why he changed his name to Extreme, but it's just a funny that here already he already referenced Extreme, and later he's called Extreme.
Yeah, I think this might be the reason why I accidentally started calling him Extreme instead of Excitement, because they keep repeating the word Extreme here. We then get an ad for Toy Car Story 4, where they just repeat the scene that we see them parody from Toy Story in the credits of Cars. And I was like, oh, that's kind of funny. And then they just nail the joke into the ground. They just make, it's another classic case of Cars Adventures has sort of a funny premise, and then they just ruin it by repeating it. And then the last one is an ad for Transberry Juice, which actually introduces us to Bubble Wheelhouse. And that's all. It's just another commercial special.
Fun fact, Bubble Wheelhouse is part of the evil next gens. I'm not sure if it was already later in the next episode or later on, but yeah. And of course, many seasons later, we find out he was a spy all along.
Right. Which was totally the plan. He's the General Hux of Cars Adventures. Trust me, he was always supposed to be a spy. What are you talking about?
Well, General Hux wasn't always supposed to be a spy. He only became a spy after Kylo Ren took control.
So. I'm the spy. Okay, so Uh, Commercials. The next here's I would let you recap the next one, but I have to explain the backstory behind it. In commercials 2, it contained clips made by Intersection 00, and he wanted to be involved in another commercial episode, and I felt bad that I didn't do it in commercials 3. So the next episode is commercials 4, and it's also called Cruise Attacks. Commercials 4, Cruise Attacks. We see an ad filmed by Intersection 00, and I think that's the only commercial we see. Or no, we get an ad for Ramones, who's still covered in tape. And then the
Yeah,
rest of the episode.
and after that, we go on to the. They're not officially calling themselves the Good Next Gens yet, but pretty much the YouTuber Next Gens who and Ramon, who go on to face Cruz because they are convinced she's evil, even though she hadn't really given any signs of being actually evil.
No, they saw her on a call with Chick Hicks. I think.
Yeah, okay. Other than that, but she's just there's not really that many. And then they go to stop her, and then the evil Next Gens show up, and basically it turns into the first ever off-track battle between the good and evil Next Gens, even though they're not calling themselves that yet. That's in late. I believe that comes up in like season 4 or season 5, but they do have a fight, and eventually, I don't even remember who won. I think the good Next Gens.
I think so. Jackson gets knocked into flows because they're fighting on the cliff.
And this is also I think Bubba Wheelhouse, and I believe either Ryan or Chase also showed up with the evil Next Gens here.
I want to say it's Ryan. It's one of the two of them. It's not both. It's not Chase and Ryan.
It's Bubba and one of the other two.
I'm going back through the episode now.
Either I know that Chase was referenced early on in this series as being on vacation.
He appears later on. He appears in the season finale.
Yeah.
I think it's Chase and it's Ryan and Bubba. The next episode is Mater's new ShamWow. It's a 2-minute advertisement for the ShamWow. That's it. It's a weird, out of place joke episode where Mater sells a washcloth.
It doesn't even unlike the recent Sarge episode. This one just doesn't even fit into the series.
Yeah, like this should not be here. It should have been like a skit episode. Just like a short skit episode like I occasionally do nowadays. Mater advertises a ShamWow. That is all. I had thought the ShamWow was very funny for a long time. I've always thought the ShamWow was funny. I still do. In fact, I wrote an entire report. I wrote an entire essay on the ShamWow in college. So the prompt was we had to write about an ad, and I chose the ShamWow ad. So I've always had a soft spot for the ShamWow. I've always thought it was funny. So
carried over the Cars Adventures with the most random characters showing up.
I got a ShamWow around this time when I did a video where Mater advertises it. And yeah, some random weird characters are in it. I like the fact that they demonstrate a spill by having Mr. Drippy knocked into a car. McQueen gives a really weird testimonial. I think it's funny, but it's just so out of place. I have a soft spot for it because it's so weird, and I think it's memorable, but whatever.
Yeah.
We then have the world's most disconnected Thanksgiving special. Episode 19, Turkey Hunt Thanksgiving Part 1, and Episode 20, Red Eyes Thanksgiving Part 2. And Turkey Hunt...
Let's first get onto... the only thing that connects the two episodes is that... two things. One, that the king wants the Thanksgiving to be at Cal's lonely apartment, and of course Lightning mentioning the race that he's about to be in the next episode.
Yeah, in Turkey Hunt, Sarge and Fillmore are tasked with acquiring a turkey for them to eat at Thanksgiving, and they run into some other cars. It's hard for them to get it, but it's sort of a Fillmore versus Sarge thing, where Sarge is kind of rude to everybody. Another instance of Sarge being a jerk, just like last season.
Well, Sarge orders them to get out of the way, and some of them listen, and Fillmore asks nicely.
And we learn that Fillmore asking cars nicely always gets the job done a bit better than how Sarge does it.
They both get the job done, so I don't really see the point.
Exactly. No lesson learned. And yeah, then we learn that Lightning is having the Silver Legends race, which we see in the next episode, Red Eyes.
It's just one of 2 episodes in the series that is called Red Eyes, and formed the inspiration for a custom which you made on a stream at some point, which I've also made in both Mini and 155 form. So I believe there's currently 4 red eyes out there.
Red Eyes is iconic. For those of you who somehow don't know, there's a song at the end of Cars 3 called Ride, and I misheard it as Red Eyes, so I called this episode that. And again, it's since become a big running joke on my channel where I made a custom and I called it Red Eyes. So yeah.
Initially, you made it mini customs, and I believe you later, I'm not sure if you finished it, but you later wanted to make a 155 skill, which you did start working on.
Yeah, I don't think I ever showed it, but...
And I also made both a mini and a 155 skill custom for it.
So there's this race. It's a charity. It's a benefit race. I think it's a Doc Hudson tribute race. Despite being called the Silver Legends race, nobody is painted silver. I think it's a fun...
Except for Lightning.
Yeah.
Well, Lightning is painted silver, but you barely recognize him. When I watched this for the first time, I thought it was one of those other racer characters.
Yeah, he's got a really bad design. His eyes are silver with blue pupils and blue eyebrows. Sure, why not? The racers here are kind of random. You have Jeff, Nigel Dearsley, the King, Murray Clutchburn, Francesco. I think this is Francesco's first appearance in the series. Bobby, Cal. Eventually, Cal accidentally gets flipped over, and we get our first ever Cal is Lonely song, which actually carries into the outro for the first ever time. We have me playing other audio over the outro, which I just think is funny.
And still is done to this day.
So who wins the race?
David Hopscap, because
yeah.
Because the rules for the race are apparently so stupid, because whoever crosses the finish line first, it doesn't matter if you started the race, if you finish the race in first, you win. And he crosses the finish line in his race because he doesn't like that rule.
Yeah. So...
which is once again another example of me getting frustrated with early Cars Adventures racing rules, because this is by far the worst one.
Yeah, so we learned
series.
that at least this episode acknowledges that it's a dumb rule. We learned that they're racing on a...
that's like the only good thing I have to say can acknowledge on this episode.
Yeah, we learned that they're racing on a tractor field, and they're like, wait a minute, so if a tractor crosses the finish line, that means it wins? And David gets so mad at that he quits. But in order to quit, he has to drive across the finish line to get to the other side of the road, which means he wins. And then we end with Cal being flipped over. Cal is lonely. Haha, very funny. And there was actually a canceled third Thanksgiving episode where they have dinner at Cal's place. It is weird because it's set up quite a bit. We don't see it. It was canceled. Yeah. We then move on to the next episode, the pizza problem. Double O takes the stage, and he ordered a pizza, but he accidentally had the pizza be delivered to, what is it, Carburetor Springs on Route 65?
Route 65.
Route 65.
Which is, another thing that bothers me of early Cars Adventures, again, is that you had just like Route 64, Route 65, as if they were nearby streets or something.
That's not how that works.
And not other roads which go across the part of the country. And then they're all, for some reason, it's just more like streets, and yeah.
So this episode starts to go off the rails pretty quickly. Double O jumps onto Mac, and Mac gives him what he was going to deliver to a kid's birthday party, which is a giant, like, Lightning McQueen mech, which he uses to trace down the Pizza Planet truck. And then a ramp, Uchi, appears out of nowhere. They jump onto him, and then suddenly they end up in a monster truck racing rink and get knocked out. And that's when we learn that this was all just a story that Double O made up to tell the other racers because he was supposed to get pizza for a party.
Yeah, and he wanted an excuse for why he did it. It's just like, it's just stupid.
I think this one is kind of funny just because, like, I like...
It's acknowledged as not actually not happened.
Yeah, it gets so dumb and off the rails. I like the fact that at the end it's revealed that, like it gets to a point where you're like, seriously, how is all of this happening? And after rewatching so much of Cars Adventures, I was like, oh, you're kidding me. Why did I do this? And I thought it was a clever twist at the end that none of it actually happened. Also, the tie custom speaks for the first time in this episode.
Yeah.
The next episode is The Adventures of Finn, Mater, and a Tractor. Mater and Finn are on a mission together. And Mater wants to use his sidekick, Tractor Boy, who's a tractor. They're attacked.
It is stupid because they're fighting lemons. Okay.
And then all of a sudden,
Is Fritter?
Miss Fritter, for some reason.
Yeah.
And now when Miss Fritter attacks, she knocks both of them out. And Finn finally believes in Tractor Boy. There's just one problem. Tractor Boy is on his lunch break. And his lunch break is 24 hours long.
How was he able to fight against the others in the beginning then?
Exactly.
It's just...
The joke at the end, the twist, is that, well, okay, we cut to 24 hours later where Miss Fritter conveniently returns to attack them again. And Finn's like, okay, great, it's been 24 hours, so now we need Tractor Boy again. But Mater's like, well, no, because Tractor Boy it's been 24 hours, so he's on his lunch break again.
Okay, I'm gonna repeat this once again. This makes no sense.
It just falls apart when you apply minimal logic to it. This one is dumb.
Exactly, because they would have gotten up after 24 hours, right?
I don't like Finn in this episode. I feel like Finn is like out of character. It's just dumb, and it makes it. This is like the least of all the filler episodes in this season. This one is the least relevant to anything. Everything else is sort of focused around the racers. This is like, why is this here? Other than the Veterans Day episode, but that's a holiday special.
Was this a suggestion episode?
It actually was not.
Surprising, even though it wasn't mentioned in it, but I wouldn't be surprised if there were more suggestion episodes without being mentioned that there's suggestion episodes around.
No, this is
because that's what this season feels like.
The next episode is Good Mythical Mater, which is a parody of the YouTube show Good Mythical Morning. And the weird thing is that it parodies the intro of that series. But then when we cut to the rest of it, they say this is Radiator Springs news. So I just thought that was weird inconsistency.
Yeah,
there.
And it's also something that is never relevant to the series again because it's Mater and Holly for whatever reason.
They're the hosts.
I assume that is based on what you were doing a parody of, but
no, the hosts. The hosts of that show are two men, so I don't know why Holly was there. Also, Mater is his regular diecast, not the Precision Series one. I don't know why, but I think it's funny. I think this one is okay because we see Lightning is like their man on the scene who's watching Jeff, the Octane Gain hauler, steal paint from Ramon.
Yet, but
no, they do call him Jeff here. Jeff returns next season as Jeff, the criminal hauler. We'll learn more about him.
Yeah, he's this is somewhat of a weird introduction of one of the early Cars Adventures villains.
Yeah, so he steals paint,
and in the middle of the chase, they cut away to show something completely different.
Yeah, so well, there's a reason for that. They decide they're going to cut back to the chase and start their next news story, which is about a Yeti. I think the Yeti was Yeti, the abominable snowplow. I mean, I think the snowplow was stuck in the desert. And there's a joke that I thought was kind of funny that whenever he tries to talk, they cut back to the other news story, even when like literally nothing is happening. He starts telling a story and Holly's like, wait, breaking news! And we cut to McQueen and he gives like no update. This is another thing where I think it could have been really funny if I just did it better. Like the snowplow just keeps trying to talk, but he's cut off every single time by nothing happening in the chase. But the next time they cut away, something did happen. Sheriff got him, and all the blue paint cans fall over, represented by just a ton of Lego pieces.
Yeah,
as far as filler episodes go,
a liquid being represented by Lego blocks, as we also saw with Mater's puking last season.
I think these are supposed to be paint cans, I guess. I don't know.
No, I think this was supposed to be normal paint. Just paint.
So yeah, it's I don't know. I think this one is honestly kind of fun. It's a different premise, and again, in a season that has so many like filler episodes, at least some of them try something different. Also, I think this is the first appearance of the really bad Christmas intro I had this season that just includes Cars Christmas images. It was bad, like literally book covers. And then we moved to the finale, last race of the season, which is the last lap of the last race. We get 3 new YouTuber customs introduced. These ones, I don't even remember their names. MD, Cars Nerd.
Cars Nerd was one of them.
MD.
Toyota dude.
And, no, this wasn't Toyota
MD
dude.
MD Pro Bro, who is like the only one of these YouTuber customs in your series that I actually remember as a person.
Jonathan.
Because I wasn't really close friends with him, but I actually sort of was kind of friends with him. He was one of the few that I just knew about.
Jonathan is the last one here.
All right.
Who was just named after someone who just used their actual name. It's an alright racing episode. Also, Ryan, Chase, and Bubba are all here on the track, and they're all part of the Evil Next Gens. And we sort of focus on Danny, who's stuck in the back, but eventually learns, no, you know what? I'm gonna win this. I'm gonna win this anyway.
I assume that him then trying to win this is actually probably caused the Evil Next Gens to realize, it's not mentioned here, but that probably caused them to realize that they should not let their prisoners go if they do these promises.
Right.
Because why would they keep their promises if they're not actually under threat?
Meanwhile, Dale is also sort of towards the back, but he also gets the motivation to move up. He gets sort of cornered by the Next Gens, but he sneaks through them, like in Cars 3. He makes his way out, and at the very end of the race, we see neck and neck Jackson and Dale, and we don't see who wins.
It just cuts off, and then it's revealed at the start of the next season.
Yeah, we see in like the first episode of the next season who won. I do want to bring up a few things.
You could probably, and even if and without us spoiling it, like, you could probably just guess it.
It's pretty easy. Two things I want to mention. Number one, this is the first episode to have text on the thumbnail, which is something done in season 4, and it says Storm versus Dale. And also, this is the first time we see a Chicks Picks Cruise custom, and it's rough. It is really rough.
Yeah, it's what I remember at some point in a later season. There, it's a long time from now, but there's like also one of the Next Gen's jokes about how all their money is spent on Cruz giving herself new paint jobs.
Yeah, it's not a good paint job.
Also, she has blue. She has blue here.
Every other design of her used purple.
Yeah, the early there were a few early designs that used blue.
Yeah, so she is gold and blue here. But again, just like the first episode of the season, I think it's a pretty alright racing episode. And for a season that doesn't have much of an overarching plot, I think it's a good finale for what it was setting up. It actually pays off several different parts of this very disconnected season. We see Danny post-capture. We see Dale winning his race, or racing his race. We see that it's his last race. And yeah, with all that said, I guess we should move on to the top threes. This one was tough for me to come up with. I feel like I could point out like 3 okay episodes, and that's all.
Should I go first with my third place?
Yeah.
Well, my third place is Cruise Attacks.
Okay.
Because it's episode 17, Cruise Attacks, mostly because it's pretty much starts off it's pretty much the first off-track conflict between the good and evil Next Gens, and also the first time we had actually unofficially the organizations just generally in battle, because before this it was always the stock cars and Sally versus the evil Next Gens, and now it's starting out with the good Next Gens being mostly made up of the YouTubers, and I guess Danny was also sort of wasn't participating here, but he was also sort of became part of the good Next Gens, because
Yeah, for my third place,
that's my episode 17. Yours?
My third place is Good Mythical Mater. This season has a lot of one-off episodes, and as far as one-off episodes go, I think it's funny. It's a different concept than what we typically see in Cars Adventures at the time, and I just think it's sort of a fun one. You have some actual funny jokes in there, and I just kind of like the concept a little. That's all.
Yeah.
All right, what's your number 2?
Well, for my number 2 is episode 2, The Visit, and it's of course not a happy episode or anything with Winford dying, but it actually shows consequences to this whole fight with evil and Next Gens, etc. Because it doesn't happen often that we see actual consequences other than we got beat up and we beat them back. It's actually somebody dies because of the actions between the two sides at this point.
Yeah. My number 2...
I think And the next time we see consequences, I don't even remember what the next one. Oh yeah, we'll get to there.
My number 2 spot is The Rescue, the Veterans Day special. I think. Oh, sorry, it's called Search and Rescue. Uh, and I just like it because again, it's something different. It's nice to break up just kind of how boring this season is. It has several weirdly experimental episodes with Good Mythical Mater, The Headlight Zone, and this was a holiday special. I think the first holiday special in the series, and I just enjoyed seeing Sarge in the military. The Sarge military flashback episodes get pretty good later on, but this is the first one, of course, and it's just enjoyable to see these new characters, even if they all had really lazy names. I think the tank's name is just Tank.
Yeah, and the designs are decent.
So then we're on to your number 1, right?
Yeah, well, my number 1 is the season finale.
Mine too.
Hey!
This keeps happening.
Again!
Um,
We do seem to have a fairly clear idea on what is the best episode for each season. That seems to be pretty consistent.
yeah.
At least with season 1 and season 3.
I think I don't know. I think it's a good racing episode.
Yeah, it finishes up several things throughout the series and pretty much shows how it's pretty much like a preview for how later Piston Cup races are. The later Piston Cup races in next year, 2018. They're pretty similar to this one. So, yeah.
Yeah. So with all that, I guess that's pretty much it because we have the same first place. Do you want to go over your final thoughts for this season?
Yeah. Well, I think this season was pretty much all over the place, just with all kinds of random episode things jumping all around. Yeah, it's just a lot of one-off episode or 2 or 3 episode plots with, I guess, the overall plot being with the races and the final race coming up, but it's not really. It's only like 3 or 4 episodes that it's actually relevant to. So it's not really an overall plot, I think. So yeah, the episode 17, of course, is a good example where there's the development between good and evil.
Do you
Yeah, of course, the new YouTuber customs.
do you think that the episodes of this season are better than 1 and 2? So I think they're getting a little better.
It still depends on the episode.
Yeah.
Like I would say, the worst episode of this season is worse than the best episode of season 1 and 2.
Yeah. So what I wrote down is this season suffers from a lack of overarching plot. Most episodes, even into the end of the season, connect very little. It bothers me that with like 2 episodes away from the end, we just have random filler. We should have instead had that like before the race episode be later on in the season. While the season doesn't do much, it does do a lot for the series because it brings together the good versus evil next gen plotline. Our heroes and villains are becoming more defined. And in the one-off episodes, I found that some of the jokes actually landed. So, with all that, that wraps up Season 3, which means we're going to have to move on to Season 4, which I have long said is my least favorite season of the entire show. So, honestly, I'm excited because we get to see if that still holds up.
Yeah, it's time for more suffering.
Season 5 is the first season where I think we can both agree it gets kind of good.
It's the first one that has some kind of overarching plot.
And after Season 5 is the time that after Season 5 is where I sort of forget what happens next in the series, so I'm honestly very interested. These 2017 seasons are tough, but we're getting to the end. We're starting to slowly as Cruz says, push through to the positive. So once again, thank you all so much for watching this episode or listening to this. This is actually available on in YouTube's like music streaming service because I have it set to a podcast. I don't know who would listen to this when you could listen to music, but yeah, thank you all so much for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye now.